Welcome to Tech Tribe, the podcast where we talk to the people behind the technology that keeps digital payments safe. I'm your host, Ivana Paskoska. Today's episode is a bit special. My colleague Tanja Steinhoff joins as guest host on site in Munich, discussing with our fraud expert Matthias Heite about the GNZ etc. Binetech solution, which recently won platinum by Juniper Research. Tanja and Matthias unpack a major topic in payments now through sharing real examples and client stories, what it means to be witnessing a large-scale attack that affects banks and cardholders, and, of course, what happens next. So let's join Tanja and Matthias in Munich. Enjoy.
Hi, Matthias.
Hi, Tanja.
Hi. We are actually here in person to celebrate one more time together that the GND etc. 3D Secure Issuer Service won the Juniper Award in banking and fraud. And actually, we won it for our Binetech score. Today, we would like to talk about what Binetechs actually are, how they hit the 3D secure environment in the last couple of months or even years, how it evolved, and how we make our service more secure for our clients. But before we start, maybe we can shortly introduce each other to the audience. Matthias, would you like to start?
Yeah, Tanja, thanks for having me. My name's Matthias Heite. I'm a 3DS risk and fraud specialist, the 3DS issuer services at GND etc. And what I'm working on, besides my title, is probably more interesting, is actually being in contact with our end customers, so not the card holders, but the banks, the processors, and checking with them if everything works out, if there are any problems. We analyze data together, we consult building models, and we also continuously work on features to further improve the service wherever we see that something is lacking or new fraud trends appearing, which happens basically daily. So the fraudsters are always very creative, using all the technology at hand without GDPR. So this is always something which brings a lot of surprises and a lot of challenges, which is quite cool. Yeah.
It for sure is not getting boring.
Yeah.
So, and about myself, my name is Tanja Steinhoff. I'm with GND etc. now for more than 5 years. I started as product manager for the access control service. So actually the core of the GND etc. 3D Secure Issuer Service. I'm a VICO associate member. So my heart is still beating for the 3DS protocol. Nowadays, I'm managing the overall service with all the teams, but if you ask me, I could still give you the transaction codes and reasons and ECI values per scheme regulations. And what basically frustrates and makes me very angry is when fraudsters are actually using my beloved 3DS protocol in order to validate PANs. And now we are starting to get into the topic of Binetechs. So Matthias, could you shortly bring us back to autumn 2024? Because when I started working in the 3DS industry, it was all about regulatory compliance in the EU region. PSD2 came into effect so it was not that much about Binetechs, which are very relevant for other areas in the payment industry since years. But recently, in the last 12 to maybe 18 months, we have seen some involvements here, especially with some of our customers. So maybe you could just tell us what happened in autumn last year. And fortunately, little spoiler, you were a little bit prepared for what was coming.
Yeah, we really were. So going back to autumn last year, we were already discussing with lots of banks, okay, are you seeing Binetechs, card testing in general in the 3DS rails, which was not only triggered by what we have seen, but also what was reported to us by the card schemes. They were really telling us, okay, you have to look out for it because we see a decline actually in attacks happening in the authorization channel, and they are going somewhere. And it was really clear to everyone that probably 3DS will be attacked. We were also ready to react, to decline a transaction, which is quite important when you're looking at a bin attack in the 3DS rails, which which is quite clear in authorization, where you only have success or failure. But in 3DS, you have actually more options to react as an issuer, and this is structurally exploited. Also, probably as we speak right now, multiple ACSs around the world, which is then misused as a PAN validation machine, which is in the internet. So you can freely use it. Everyone who's out there, don't do it. Yeah, and this was the situation. So we were a little bit aware, but no one was able to tell us how big the problem is. And some banks told us, okay, yeah, we actually don't have the problem. So we don't see it. It's not happening to us. And we had it on our list, but it was priority down. And then on a Friday, I got a call from our product manager for risk and fraud topics. And he said, yeah, I just talked to a customer, and their call center is melting down. Something is happening. We have to check it right now. And it was not my preferred point in time on the Friday afternoon, but nevertheless, we checked it, and what we saw was really, really a huge attack. It was done using a very, very big German merchant, actually, because we directly had the feeling that this attack is so huge that you also, as a merchant, have to have quite an IT infrastructure to handle so many requests. Because
Matthias, just to give us an impression, when you say huge, are we then talking about 10 transactions a second or 100? Or what is the dimension we are speaking of?
Yeah, it's really worthwhile to talk about it in transactions per second. So like 10 transactions per second happening, even more during this attack. And what was actually triggering, so when you're looking at it from a monitoring perspective, as we first saw it, usually when you look at the monitoring, you see daily spikes happening, ramping up in the morning when someone buys a train ticket on the phone and maybe click and collects the coffee along the way to work. So the transactions, they ramp up, and over the day it keeps steady, and then it goes down again late in the evening when all the online shopping in front of the TV is finished. So this is typically the monitoring that you see. And what we saw is that there was a huge spike, doubling the volume. So it was really the normal traffic going on, and on top, the same amount that the complete bank normally sees just for card testing. And there are two other perspectives to this. So this was our monitoring perspective. But another perspective is simply the bank. So what they were seeing is, at first they saw nothing, because they were not looking at the technical monitoring, but they were looking at successful transactions. But most of these transactions, they were never successful. So at first, they didn't know what was happening. But then,
maybe we can also shortly switch perspective and talk about the cardholder, because you mentioned that the volume in the call center went up, and that was actually the trigger for our customer to react. So what happens actually on the cardholder's side when a bin attack is happening?
Yeah, and this is actually the part of the second and the third perspective. So the third perspective is, of course, the cardholder. So what happens? So some fraudster types in, just by coincidence, your individual card number. So what happens? You get a push notification on your phone which says, "Oh, Tanja, great that you want to buy a train ticket for 200 euro. Just please confirm here." But you have never initiated this. So you're getting probably kind of worried, okay, someone is using my account to now move money, buying a train ticket, maybe my money is gone.
So I'm doing the correct thing, I guess. So I get the push notification on my phone. I say, "No, please, I don't want to do that." And then I'm calling the call center of my bank saying, "Hey, something just happened." And then I eventually need to wait for an hour, because in the meantime, there was a queue of 1,000 other cardholders who are experiencing the very same thing. Correct?
Yeah. And exactly this is when our customer first really had a grasp on what the situation was, because they had waiting line for the call center, which they are visualizing. So you can see, okay, how well is the process going? And it was going up, 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 up. They started to bring back people from which already wanted to leave, which were on holiday. So calling everyone in and say, okay, we have a huge problem. We need to respond now to our customers, because many of them were really afraid. So there were some who just clicked it away and didn't bother. There were also cards tested which didn't exist, so no one was at the end of the line. But the attack was so huge that the ones which were hitting a valid card, and where someone felt the urge to now clarify this with the bank, was so huge that the call center could no longer handle it.
In the meantime, at the same moment, they were on a call with you in order to find a solution for the problem.
Yeah. As I already said, we were pretty prepared to react. We were not able to detect a bin attack yet, but this was not the issue at the time. So it was pretty clear that it's ongoing, and there were enough transactions to look at to really create a reaction, which was very targeted.
Reactively.
Yeah. To specifically the merchants in question. There were also particular bin ranges attacked in this case, which is not necessarily always the case. And we were able to directly block the transaction at the ACS, so no push message was sent out again, meaning the cardholders were no longer getting the messages. No one was afraid anymore, so the call center queue went down and everything returned to normal. And then this also, after a while, led to the testing attack as a whole being stopped. So you can already imagine that this was also our first learning, because it was already the case that the attackers were not successful in terms of making a successful transactions, but they were successful in just creating this push notification, because as a customer, you have two interaction points with your e-commerce transaction. You confirm on the phone, but you also trigger the checkout process. And the confirmation on the phone was really happening with the true cardholder, but the triggering of the transaction was actually done by the fraudster.
Yeah.
So what the fraudster got to see was someone is getting a push notification and basically reading, please now confirm on your banking app, and then some spinner that you can see. So from this point in time, it was clear that this card exists. So when you start the attack with no knowledge, so this is like the very basic form. You just generate card numbers. For everyone who is interested, just Google, create card number, and you will get even online services which offer this conveniently. You get an API with a documentation. They even have a support line. So this is a business. And you type it in, and as soon as you see, please check, okay, I hit a valid card. Most probably you will just see, this transaction is not allowed to you, direct decline. So you don't even get to the challenge screen. And this is actually the advantage of testing in 3DS. Because when you test an authorization, you need to be successful to validate that the card exists. In 3DS, you don't need to be successful. It's enough to see, please confirm. And no one is confirming it. Doesn't matter. You know it exists.
And there I can maybe shortly bring in some input from the 3DS protocol, how convenient we even make it for the fraudsters, because we always get an authentication request and we answer with an authentication response. And even if the cardholder is not enrolled in service, we would, and this challenge screen you mentioned is not being rendered, we see in our system, the card exists. Okay, we reply with a transaction reason N. So no, the transaction is of course not successful, but we give the reason. It's just because the card is not enrolled for 3DS. Wonderful news for the fraudster. So they know that this card exists, and this is exactly the mechanism you just explained. So the question is, what should be the response? And also there, Envico gives us an answer. So we should just respond with the reason code and the reason suspected fraud. But how do we come to that? So you already mentioned the case in autumn where we were able to react on behalf of our customers then reactively for that particular case, that merchant, to send this reason code back, if I understood you correctly,
Yes.
right? So then hopefully at some point you will all be able to enjoy your weekends. But then I can also very well remember we've spoken just the week after. how do we continue? Reactive mode is not, the solution for the future. And then you actually said, well, I have something in mind where it's actually almost ready and done. And that is when the Binetech score came into effect.
Yeah. So, what we directly did, we sat together, pulled out our priority list, and turned it upside down, basically, and said, okay, this is not sustainable. No one of us and no one at the customer wants to spend their weekend in an extra shift in the call center or reacting to and blacklisting merchants, excluding them basically from all businesses, just to prevent these attacks, and always reacting, always running around. So we had to build the missing piece. The detection in the end. So the reaction was already there. We knew what to do. And now it was about detection. And this is actually quite a success story, which involves many parties. In the end, this came to life. We took this huge attack and started building a model on it. And then we applied the model and we said, okay, is there someone out there who wants to test this with us? And of course, the customer affected was very happy to help, but there were also others who said, yeah, what can go wrong? Just give us this the scoring result and we will give you feedback. And this was actually for us the best situation we could be in, because we had one incident which was so huge that you would never count it as a false positive. We could train the model and then see how it reacts. And actually, seeing this model in effect, we found at first some false positives. So beginning of the year 2025, the Technical University of Zurich, they sent out an email to everyone and said, yeah, you are part of the alumni program. Please renew your yearly contribution. Otherwise, your account will be suspended. And all of a sudden, many cardholders all over Switzerland started going to this exact merchant, which was not in use for a year. You can imagine it's a yearly contribution. And so the transactions, they ramped up and we directly said, oh, stop. This is a bin attack. We have to block it. So this was our first steps. We were not very proud of it. But since we were in testing mode with so many customers, we quickly realized what's wrong, and we adapted. And we adapted again and again. And then something also which was surprising for us happened, and which is the reason that I'm not so happy with the name Binetech score, which we probably cannot change now anymore.
Hardly.
But what we found is actually we were setting out on the goal to find these huge attacks which are targeted at these generated card numbers coming in. But once we refined the score more and more and getting feedback from the customer, we started seeing smaller attacks which were going on continuously. And these were not looking like, okay, you just guessed a card number, but they were more like, okay, yeah, someone had some card numbers and we assume from the darknet, from a data breach somewhere, or they were tested before and you had a short list and now you retest this short list to find out which cards are still in action. And this was also then suddenly appearing, and we said, okay, let's go inside, look at the data again, check and flag, retrain, and get really into this mode of continuously improving. And now we are not only detecting these enumeration attacks, bin attacks, but also just testing of any kind, And this is something which is very structural in any fraud scenario. So before you waste your attempt and reveal yourself as a fraudster to any detection mechanism, you just try not at the merchant where you want to get the money, but you make a quick try maybe in 3DS or at another merchant where you just send in a small amount and just check, is this card existing? Is it worthwhile? My few attempts that I have before I get caught, and then really move in. And this is something that we are also detecting, which, makes it a little bit confusing that it's only called bin attack when it's in fact targeting card testing as a whole. Carding or enumeration attacks or whatever you want to call it.
Yes. Okay, let us think a bit about the naming again, but I guess also with our Uniper word, it's becoming more hard, or it became harder now to change it.
And it's doing what it's named, but it's something more,
And it's maybe we can also see it this way. It is also just one part of our 3DS fraud prevention system. So we are not having only the bin attack score as additional feature to our RBA model as part of the ACS. Which brings me maybe to my closing question. Binetech score, it's already live. Yes, we are still working on it, but what is currently on your mind, what you are focusing or concentrating on?
Yeah, so we now had basically our scoring pilot out there with the Binetech score. So we are focusing on one topic that's on the agenda actually for, I think, 1.5 or even 2 years now, moving up and down a general scoring, which takes into account other fraud cases, which is not card testing specific, but really targeting also social engineering, scam fraud. So the type of non-technical fraud that we are seeing. So this is definitely one aspect where we also want to provide a scoring mechanism, and we hope that we can apply the same idea, that we collaborate with some institutions that say, okay, we believe in it, we want to test it and provide us with feedback to get this going. On top, we always have the fear that there are some types of frauds which a model will not detect. And this is actually when a love scam happens. So you are convinced by someone via emotions, or also via pressure, or you are winning the lottery. Yes. You have an investment scheme which is so good that you miss out if you don't react now.
Most of the time under time pressure.
Yeah. And then you are doing the transaction. So actually it's your phone which is enrolled since 1.5 years. It's your PC, you're sitting at home. So everything matches.
Classic scam.
Yeah. Everything matches. So on a technical level, you will not be able to detect it. So what you have to focus on is the emotional level. So there we have something in the works. But on the other hand, we want to use this collaboration that we experienced when creating the Binetech score among our customer base to say, okay, when this scam happens, the money goes somewhere. So it might be a fraudulent merchant involved, or a merchant which is just used to get the cash out. So what we are looking at is to create a data sharing platform where when this happens to one institution, you can flag it, and everyone else is then warned when this merchant pops up all of a sudden, and all of your customers suddenly want to do some investment at this new merchant you have never heard of. But then you can fall back and say, okay, this is maybe tricky because we had other organizations reporting this to be dangerous or to be prone to fraud, which might actually be a way to detect also this, from a technical level, undetectable scams.
Many thanks. You touched now multiple aspects. We have the Binetech score, which we internally call the little sister of the big score, the big brother we are developing at the moment. You touched our idea about data sharing, and also an eventual disruption in the authentication flow in order to help our cardholders to protect themselves against scams. As everyone can hear, we have a lot on the pipeline. So Matthias, I'd rather let you go.
Back to work it is.
Many thanks.
Thank you for having me.